Go
Hey
into
guys,
it.
Darren Tessitore here. I'm a volunteer with the Foundation for a Drug-Free World. Drug-Free World is the world's largest free drug education program. I started volunteering with the organization about 10 years ago. Growing up, I had a pretty interesting time with drugs and alcohol. Before the age of 15, I had lost 7 of my friends to drugs and alcohol and started heading down that path pretty hard. And it got to a point where I realized that if I kept going in this direction, I was going to not make it. So I pulled myself out, luckily, and then started a family, lived my life, and then eventually, when my kids got to that age where I was, when I started seeing drugs and alcohol, I was looking for something to educate them, and the Foundation for a Drug-Free World came to my church and did a presentation, and that's when I said, "Wow, I really want to help this organization, and I want to teach my kids about this material." So I did. I taught my kids, and then the next thing you know, I started going around teaching different people about the program. Started going to local schools, school boards, and then next thing you know, I found myself at national conventions for driver instructors. The driver instructor community is great. They have a drug and alcohol portion they have to do, where they train the kids on what drugs are. So I started training driver educators, started training police, school resource officers, then we started doing all the Super Bowls about 5 years ago. Started working with Lee Steinberg and his group at his events. And we go and we set up a drug-free world booth there. And basically what we do is we train educators, or I do. I go around the country and I train educators on how to use this free drug education program. So what I want to do is I'm going to give you guys a little bit of an overview of what's happening with drugs in the world today. And then I'm going to give you a little bit of the tools that we offer for free that you can use to help educate kids on what drugs really do. So let me just jump right into that. One second here. There we go, sure. Good. Looks good. Okay, good. So drugs today, national drug overdose deaths. This is the United States, people dying from drug overdoses. You can see here it went down a little bit, but in 2018, it was at 67,000 Americans that died from drug overdoses. It's a pretty drastic number when you start looking at the actual severity of what's really going on. I mean, it's obviously playing a major part in all of our lives. And if you break this down a little bit and you look at the national drug overdose based on what types of drugs, you're going to see here synthetic drugs is the #1 killer. Those are like your fentanyls and other fake drugs. And then you have your prescription opioids are second. Fentanyl, just so you know what it is, it's a painkiller. And it's getting mixed into other drugs, which is what's causing the death rate to be so high, like heroin and things like that. So what's happening is the people are getting prescribed the opioids and they're highly, highly addictive. And then from there, when their prescriptions get taken away or they don't get a prescription anymore, they go to the streets and they find heroin and other street drugs. And those drugs get mixed with fentanyl. And fentanyl is obviously an extremely powerful painkiller. What it actually does is it sucks all of the oxygen out of your body and suffocates you, and then you die. And you've probably seen this thing called Narcan. They used to have the Narcan shots. Now they have a little thing they put under your nose. What Narcan does is it pumps the oxygen back into your body and brings you back to life. And people actually do get revived from dead with Narcan. But you'll see that in every police car in the US, for example, because the cops are running into so many fentanyl overdoses. It's actually pretty scary, right? So then you have here opioid deaths. That graph has obviously gone up drastically over the last 10 years. And then you have drug deaths involving opioids prescriptions. So these are ones that were prescribed as opposed to just people dying from them who weren't necessarily prescribed them. And then you have heroin. So heroin's gone down a little bit as well, but it's still a major street drug. So people are actually taking the heroin on the street and finding it killing them, and also fentanyl is being mixed in it and other different drugs. Fentanyl has a very similar high to the opioids, and that's part of the problem you're running into. Plus, it's really inexpensive and easily accessible. So what's been discovered is that people who begin using these drugs at a younger age are more likely to actually continue to use them at older ages. So a lot of the kids is where Drug Free World targets, trying to get the middle and high school kids to understand what the drugs are. I would recommend that as well if you're looking at doing anything in your community. Try to educate the kids and get them some data on what drugs really are. And I know there's a big debate right now over marijuana being legalized, and I'm not here to talk about laws. I'm going to give you some basic facts on marijuana and if it's harmful and if it's not addictive. This is THC. This is the drug that's in marijuana that causes you to hallucinate. And as you can see from the 60s up until 2015, which is really when we have the latest numbers readily available, the percentages of THC have gone through the roof. And I'm going to get into vaping here in a minute too and show you how they're actually vaping 98% THC. But THC is very hallucinogenic and it is very addictive. And marijuana is a gateway drug. And anyone who tells you it's not really hasn't been looking at what's going on. They haven't seen the people that are getting on the harder drugs and how they've actually started with marijuana. If you're around people that are smoking pot and you're going to a lot of parties, you're going to see other drugs. And that's what happens. It's also heavily marketed to children. You can see some of these marketing advertisements like Pot Tarts and Ring Pop and just other paraphernalia that's really heavily marketing it towards the kids. And one of the things that has been discovered is that 1 in 10 adults and 1 in 6 adolescents who try marijuana will actually become addicted to it. There were lots of studies done on this that I can send you links to if you'd like. And there's also a study done at Duke University in New Zealand that showed IQ dropping. They did studies on kids who did long-term marijuana use, and they noticed that the IQs went down by 8 to 10 points. And after they stopped the marijuana, the IQ didn't go back up. It actually stayed down, which is pretty scary. And then in Colorado, we look at the laws of what actually has happened in Colorado. And we see here that the number of traffic deaths related to marijuana when operating cars has drastically gone up from when they legalized. Right here you have here, it went from 71 all the way up to 162 in a very short amount of time. That's over doubling, right, from marijuana. And then you have here, if you look here, the percentage of marijuanans who admit to driving under the influence, 69% of them are admitting to driving high. So you have people driving around that are high. And this is just Colorado where it's legal. There's other states that's legal and there's similar stats all across the country. 70% of drivers in DUI tested positive to marijuana. So it's not just marijuana, they're drinking and smoking pot and driving, which is kind of scary. 50% of marijuana users in Colorado admit to driving within the last 2 hours. So these states that have the legalization, you're going to have people that are high and they're going to be driving around. I got into a cab in Breckenridge, actually an Uber in Breckenridge, and the lady told me that she was high. The car smelled like pot. And I said, "You've been smoking weed?" She goes, "Yeah, I actually drive better when I'm high." And I was like, "Well, you don't drive better with me in the car, so I'm out of here." But, you know, that's just kind of what's happening out there, right? And you'll also see that drugs and crime kind of go hand in hand. Lots of the prison population, lots of drugs involved. And also you'll see higher crime rates when people are on drugs. It's just, they go hand in hand. And I want to give you a little data on vaping. I know vaping's been a big issue right now. A lot of people think it's safe and they think it's effective. They think it actually helps to reduce the ability to smoke cigarettes and so forth. But I'm just going to give you some basic facts on what's actually in a vape. So here you have the 3 main components. You have the power source, which is down here. And then here you actually have what's called an atomizer. The atomizer is actually a piece of metal, and it's a coil. And what that does is the vapor crosses the metal. So here you have your liquid vapor up here. The liquid crosses the atomizer and then goes out and into your mouth. And what happens is the atomizer actually heats the vapor up to about 250 to 400 degrees and turns the liquid into an instant vapor. The thing that a lot of people don't realize about this atomizer is what is the atomizer made of? It's made of metal, and 75% of all the metals and atomizers right now in the US market are coming from China. And a lot of these Chinese metals don't have a lot of regulations as far as what goes in the metal, like lead and other very, very heavy, deadly metals are mixed in with the steel. So it's not just a pure metal. It has lots of other things in it. So when you're taking a metal like that and you're heating it up that hot and you're putting a liquid across it and turning it into a vapor, you're ultimately taking particles of that metal and putting it in the vapor and putting that into your lungs. And those get stuck on what's called the little cilia. Those are the little fibers inside of your lungs that pull in the oxygen. And that is actually what causes the respiratory disorders. So you're seeing a lot of these kids that are actually dying and other adults are dying and all these respiratory disorders that you don't normally see. That's typically why. So basically what's happening is, here, let me get into this. So you have the big tobacco has basically been drastically declining. So they had to come up with a tactic of actually getting some more revenue. And that's where the vaping really started getting promoted heavily by big tobacco. And if you look, you'll see the stats for cigarette smoking are drastically increasing amongst teenagers. And it correlates directly with big tobacco and the vaping world. Again, you have the heavy metals like lead and other heavy metals made in China and so forth. And then also, yeah, here's a list of metals that we have and chemicals that are in it. It's pretty intense. And then you have your different delivery systems like Juul. Juul is a brand, and you can also buy these Juul pods. But what's happening here is a lot of these pods that you're seeing aren't just nicotine anymore. They're actually putting drugs in them. In a recent survey of kids, 37% saying that they did not even know that there was nicotine in the Juul. So they're smoking the Juuls, thinking they're just smoking on some flavored vapor, but they're actually smoking really, really high quantities of nicotine. They say one pod is equivalent to a pack of cigarettes, but you know those pods are going a lot faster than a pack of cigarettes, and the amount that they're inhaling in one hit gets them highly addicted. And if you know anyone who's ever tried to withdraw from vaping, it's just like withdrawing from cigarettes. They're addicted. 25% of teens surveyed didn't even call what they're doing vaping. They were calling it juuling. So juuling is, they've pretty much cornered the market on vaping. And also now you can buy attachments to Juuls. We actually did a study in Michigan with state police where we actually had young kids going into the stores and trying to buy these Juul pods. And they were walking out with marijuana pods, little kids, 15, 16 years old, literally buying straight marijuana pods from the stores. So you're seeing a lot of that right now with these pods. So people will be getting high and you won't even necessarily know that they're getting high. And basically what you're doing is you're just taking the vegetable glycerin and you're mixing it with whatever other liquid you want and converting that into the Juuls. So what's happening here is you're actually able to infuse it like you would a tea. So you can, theoretically, you can make anything into a Juul. You can make heroin, crystal meth, marijuana, pull the THC out. You can do opioids and you can Juul these and you wouldn't even know that they were doing it. You just think that they're hitting on a vape when really they're actually sucking on marijuana or meth or whatever it may be. PCP, I had a friend of mine whose son was given a Juul and it was PCP, and then they went crazy and they were walking around the streets of New Orleans for about a day completely out of it. Parents had to go find them and they finally found the kid and he was okay, but it was bad. Could have been a really bad scene. And also what's happening is a lot of these respiratory disorders now is the third cause of death in America. So you're basically seeing all of these respiratory disorders starting to pop up now because juuling is pretty new and vaping is pretty new. And that's what's happening. It's because of the vaping. As of February 4th of 2020, 2,700 cases of e-cigarette deaths in the US, which is pretty intense. And they're also now, the FDA is starting to ban it in different states. They're banning a lot of the flavors, not necessarily the full vaping, but they're banning the flavors. So anyway, I want to just quickly get into a solution that we have. So The Truth About Drugs is a free drug education program. It's drugfreeworld.org. I'm a volunteer for them. I've been doing this for about 10 years. What our motto is that informed youth are drug-free youth. So what we're doing is we're educating the youth on what the drugs are, as opposed to telling them not to do the drugs, right? We found that doesn't necessarily work. Our mission is to educate all the kids in the world on what drugs really are. It's an effective program. It's 100% free. And I'm going to go into some of our materials. The first thing we have here is our educator package. It's a free kit. You get a 20 lesson educator guide. You get our documentary, which is a 90-minute documentary, a series of booklets, which I'm going to get into, and then some posters and so forth. And then we also have our online interactive course platform where you can go as a teacher and create a course. You can go to education.drugfreeworld.org, sign up for free, create a free course, and this course will educate kids, allow you to give the kids access to the course where they can do it for free as well in your classrooms. Basically, if you go to the website, click here and sign up as a teacher. And then the students will enroll here using this code that's right here. They'll enter the class code right here, and they'll be able to come into your classroom. And from within here, you can build out your student base, give them all their lessons and so forth. They can download the app and do the course on the app as well from any platform. And then we also have our free materials website, which is drugfreeworld.org/download/education. If you have any questions, you'll have my email at the end. I can send you a link to this. So here you can get all of our booklets. These are all of our booklets that come in the kit as well. Drugs, overview, marijuana, synthetic alcohol, ecstasy, cocaine, crack, crystal meth, inhalants, heroin, LSD, Ritalin, painkillers, and prescription drugs. You can also download all of our posters. We have these different homework assignments. We also have the educator guide here. You can download a PDF version of it, which is our full 20-lesson curriculum. You can download all your homework assignments, your pledges and so forth to give to the kids. And then you can also download our public service announcements. These are 1-minute long PSAs that are really hard hitting to get the kids to really understand a little bit about how dangerous drugs are. And then we have our full documentary, and you can download each chapter going into a different drug. The name of the documentary is Real People, Real Stories, and they talk about what the drugs are, how the drugs work from the viewpoint of the people that have been there and done the drugs. And then you can also go on drugfreeworld.org, and right on the homepage is our free online course you'll see. This is for anyone to come in here and take. They can go in and do the course, and it covers every different chapter of our documentary and all of our booklets, and basically trains you on what all the drugs are. So if you want to get a full education of what drugs really do, the full course will take about 8 to 10 hours, depending on how fast you go. You can do it at your own pace, but you can fully educate yourself on what these different drugs are, which is great. You watch the documentary chapters, and then you can read all the booklets on there as well as part of the course. We also do give all of our booklets out for free in any quantity. Just to give you an example, last year, the state of Alabama wanted to give our alcohol, our marijuana, and our heroin booklets to all of their 9th and 10th graders. So we shipped them 1.8 million booklets for free, and they gave them out to all the kids. So if anyone wants any of these in any quantity, they can have them for free as long as they get them out. We have our drugs booklet, which goes over all the different drugs, what they are, how they work. Our marijuana booklet, which we just finished a new version of this with the DEA. There's some great data in here really outlining what marijuana is, how it works, what it does to you, long-term, short-term side effects, and so forth. And that's kind of the pattern of all the books. It explains what the drug is, how it works, how it's made, short-term, long-term side effects, really geared towards getting you to make a self-determined choice, which we found to be extremely effective. Then we have synthetic drugs, alcohol, ecstasy, cocaine, crack, crystal meth, inhalants, heroin, LSD, Ritalin abuse, painkillers, and prescription drugs. And then our documentary, of course. And then our public service announcements. And that's about it. That's all of our materials. They're all online for you in any quantity. I think that's about it for my presentation here. And here's my contact info. Oh, there we go. If anyone wants to reach out to me, you can give me a call. You can shoot me an email here, and I can basically get you any materials you need. We do free seminars. We do free trainings. So if you have any educators that you want to train on how to use the program, or if you want us to come to your schools and do anything in that light as well, we can definitely do that too. So that's all that I'm going to go into on my slideshow. So I guess if anyone has any questions for me, is that how we're doing this as a panel? Sam, you there?
Oh yeah, hi everyone.
Hey.
Thanks, Darren.
You're
That
welcome.
was very comprehensive.
I kind of went through,
yeah.
I went through it kind of fast. I didn't want to take up too much time, but just kind of want to give you guys a high level overview.
Sure. Yeah, no, I mean, it was very comprehensive, and I think, obviously, it's way deeper than that. It goes way deeper, but you did a flyover, so to speak.
Exactly, right?
A lot of information. So hi, everybody. I am Timothy Harrington. I have been in the behavioral healthcare space for 18 years. What got me there was about a 16-year love affair with cocaine and vodka. and a tumultuous relationship. First, it was really fun, and then it was not fun after a while. And what it led me to was working in the space of behavioral health care, specifically around substance use disorder, and many incarnations. But my final incarnation has been helping families navigate relationships with people who are experiencing addiction. And that's been the most rewarding. I have a family. I came from a family. We struggled. The support and services around that are not as great as they are for somebody who's doing the actual experiencing of addiction. So my whole MO has been able to sort of, or the desire to sort of equal that out to help the family, because I don't believe that addiction comes in bottles and cans or syringes or baggies or anything that comes in systems. And so the repair of that system is the most important thing for sustainable change for any one person or the system they come from and the relationships they're in. And what I did in the last year, we were talking about it before we came on, is I started to really realize in the last probably 3 or 4 years how much of stigma impacts your work, Darren, and my work, and everybody's work and everybody who's either been in relationship with people who have used drugs or have done it themselves, how big stigma plays a part in just coming to some solutions. You know, we can have all this information, which is fantastic, but it's how do we interact with each other, with the systems we're involved in, our family systems, our jobs, our communities, our towns, our cities, our states, our country. And so I traveled around the U.S. last year with my family. We sold everything, and we traveled the country, and we did about 22 to 25 events, I can't remember, but all related to stigma and being able to sort of talk about this in a way that takes out stereotypes. We function on stereotypes because I guess it's just an easier way to discuss, but it's very damaging, especially around substance use disorder. When we refer to people as addicts and alcoholics and these kinds of things, because they come with so much baggage, and it actually prevents people from reaching out for help. We know that we have about 20 million people in the country who are struggling with some experience with a drug and then, by the way, addiction is not just about drugs. It is about behavior as well. So just to be clear, there are many, many more people out there who are struggling than there is treatment for. And a lot of that barrier and a lot of that friction is stigma. And so we traveled around the country in this converted bus, and we talked to people. And what we found out was really interesting, is that they weren't really too confused about anything except how do they talk about it in public? How do we talk about it in our own systems? How do we talk about it in our own families? Because there's a lot of secrecy involved because of the stigma. There's a lot of shame. And I like to refer to those things as friction. How do I get from where I am to where I need to go to resolve some challenge in my life? And what I can tell you is that there are so many amazing young people out there, and Darren, you can testify to this in terms of your interaction with people around the country, that all the stuff you do, which is fantastic, and learning how there are so many young people out there who are interested in getting involved at a public level, talking about their challenges, not just around addiction, but also mental health, anxiety, depression. We met a group of kids in Sacramento who couldn't have been more happy we were there, because they wanted to tell us, thank you for going out there and talking to people about this, because they know beyond a shadow of a doubt that the way to get out in front of these things is to not be silent, is to talk about our challenges. Because, and this is just one area that I find myself after all these years really siding on, and that is that drugs aren't the problem, they're the solution. And because they're a solution, and because there's so much shame around them, people don't talk about it, and so they use drugs in secret, and they don't want to talk about it. And that really is